So we're being recorded. The focus, however, will be on Rosemary and me. And I just want to do a shout out for Lauren from Environment for the Americas, who is our tech person tonight. And she's a communication specialist for Environment for the Americas. And again, my name is Alicia King. I am a volunteer with Environment for the Americas. My day job is as the executive director for the Wisconsin Society for Ornithology. But tonight we are going to have fun with the Environment for the Americas Bird Book Club. So let us know where you're joining us from. Let us know what your nemesis bird is. And then I am going to share a really quick slideshow so that I can just share a little bit about Environment for the Americas, who we are, what we do, and why we do it. So again, welcome to the Environment for the Americas Bird Club. And Lauren, I'm just going to ask for a verbal, you can see my slides.
Yes, we can.
Excellent. All right. Again, welcome everybody. So many of you who are rejoining us for the Bird Book Club already know this, so my apologies for going over it again. But we, as an organization, Environment for the Americas, are committed to connecting diverse audiences with nature and bird conservation. And so we lead global partnerships focused on bird conservation and protecting migratory bird species and their habitats across international borders. And we really hope that our programs nurture that next generation of conservationists through the education, the outreach, and the meaningful opportunities that we create. One of the things that is our cornerstone is the World Migratory Bird Day. Show of hands or woohoos or hearts. How many of you have attended a World Migratory Bird Day event? So we really look at this annual event as an awareness raising initiative, and it really highlights the need for conservation of migratory birds and their habitats. It has global reach, and it gives hopefully action and inspiration to conserve both birds and their environments through all of the education and activities that we do across borders. And you can learn more about this by going to the website. And I want to make sure I mention our internship programs because these are crucial in helping us inspire that next generation. So we really look to empower underrepresented early career professionals. So we have partnerships with U.S. Forest Service, National Park Service, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Bureau of Land Management, Audubon chapters, bird chapters, other organizations. And these help offer those hands-on experience and mentorships that we hope equip that next generation to be our conservationists. And I want to make sure you know about our next webinar. In October, it's Policy for Birds, and we have a panel of experts who are really thinking about those conservation policies and how we can successfully help legislation to make a difference for birds. You can find out more about that on our website, and I think Lauren might be sticking some of these links into the chat. And then our September webinar is now available for you to watch on YouTube. So please visit that and think about this important issue related to birds and their migration. We have one seat, and I'm thinking really hard about this trip. We have one seat left on the international trip to Cuba, and I may talk myself into going to it. So if you want it, you better hurry up before I grab it. And then, of course, you know, we want you to be able to support our work and share what we do with other people. As I mentioned at the beginning, I am a volunteer. So I do this because it's one way that I can help contribute to Environment for the Americas. I'm also a member. You can become a member. You can donate a happy kit, and we send these kits to Latin America, and they have a lot of educational resources. You can also donate for binoculars. Binoculars are something that really help people come in touch and get close to birds. And then you can donate airline miles. So if you've got some miles and you're like, I'm not going anywhere this year, maybe we could use it. So supporting our internship programs is incredibly important, and you can go shopping. And you guys know that I mention this on a regular basis. It's like, ooh, it's fun to go shopping. And one of the things I've learned is that not everything stays in stock for like forever. So don't delay. And I find that I have to go back and forth on a regular basis to check and see what's new in the shop, and I have to buy it pretty quickly because it might not be there the next time I go. But some cool things, the winter tree and the canteen are ways that you can support environment for the Americas. So enough about that. Let's get into the Bird Book Club, and we're so glad to have you here. And I see familiar names and familiar folks that have come back and for the Bird Book Club on a regular basis. So thank you for being part of our flock. So I want to introduce Rosemary. Rosemary is an author, an illustrator, and speaker. And one of the really cool things about Rosemary is that her art and her illustration and the way that she connects helps connect people to birds and to nature. And that is such a cool talent and ability to be able to do. So she's drawn for New York Times, Audubon, Rewiring America, PBS Kids Show, and she does a lot of regular comic strips, and she also has a Facebook page and Instagram where you can regularly see her things. And I actually love starting my day out with her cartoons. So she creates science books for kids and adults, and she has the nature comic Bird and Moon. She has lots of accolades and a lot of opportunity to be able to share her work with us in very meaningful ways. And she's a very engaging speaker, and she does workshops, and you can find out more about her on her website. One of the fun things in her bio, she's a graduate of the Field Naturalist program, and she judged a bird tattoo contest, not once, but twice. So we're going to ask her a little bit more about that tonight. And then I'm going to let her talk about butts a little bit later. But for right now, I am going to stop sharing and hope that that disappears for you all. And again, welcome to the Environment for the Americas Bird Book Club, and welcome, Rosemary. Thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Hi, I am really, really excited to be here. Can everybody hear me okay? Yes? Okay, good. Yay. All right. So I am very excited. And yeah, my nemesis bird I mentioned in the chat was the spruce grouse. It was my nemesis for years, and I just got it last month. I was so excited. I had to go to middle of nowhere, Quebec, and drive 7 hours up into the forest. But I got it. I was very happy. So, hi, I'm Rosemary Mosco. I'm a cartoonist and a science writer. And I have been birding my whole life, ever since I could hold my first pair of binoculars or climb up mountains to look for rare boreal alpine birds or hold out my hand to feed black-capped chickadees. And the thing about a hobby is if you spend a long time doing it, your mind will sort of start to wander when you're doing it, and you'll start thinking kind of strange things. If you've really been doing it for years, so I'm sure you can empathize with this. Even if you just started birding, your mind will sort of start to wander. So, for instance, I start thinking about bird names very often. Like, what is with the names of these birds that I'm engaging with? So, one of my favorite bird names in the world is this one here, the beautiful nuthatch, which I think is just such a lovely name for this bird. It is indeed very beautiful. It has this lovely scalloping to its wings. It's got this speckling on the nape. It's got this blue and also this reddish color and white, and they're so beautiful. I've never seen one. I love to. You can see that you have to travel quite a bit. They're found in parts of Southeast Asia. So this is just one of my favorite bird names, but I sort of started to think about it because we have nuthatches here, right? And what does it mean that we've called one of them beautiful? And the ones that we have, at least where I'm at in northeastern North America, there's the red-breasted and the white-breasted. And I think that that kind of implies that those ones are less beautiful, which seems sort of mean to me, and I don't think is true. So here's to introduce myself, here's a comic that I made that talks about real birds and then what those names imply about birds that should exist. So, for example, where I live, we get rough-legged hawks in the winter, which implies existence of some sort of smooth-legged hawk. We have great crested flycatchers. They have great crests, but that implies the existence of an okay crested flycatcher. I don't live where there are mountain chickadees, but I love mountain chickadees. But doesn't that sort of imply the existence of like a valley chickadee? And then finally, least bitterns. This was my nemesis for a really long time. Tiny, rare, beautiful birds. Let me know if you've seen one. I think they're so interesting. I finally wound up seeing a few, but they're very shy and skulking and small. And so the existence of a least bittern implies the existence of a most bittern, which is large and terrifying and easy to see and, would destroy New York. So, that's the kind of cartoon I make, but you'll find evidence for this obsession with bird names in my new book, The Birding Dictionary. So I talk about this bird here, which I'm sure some of you recognize, but imagine that you don't know what this bird is called. So it's a bird that's kind of walking on the ground. It's got very weird, high up placed, huge eyes, this very long bill with a little bit of like dirt on the end as if it's been rooting around in the dirt, and this really excellent camouflage, this kind of football shaped body. What would you call this bird if you had to come up with a name? Well, this is a bird that we call a woodcock, which is a noun for a shorebird belonging to the genus Scolopax that has an unfortunate English name. But it also goes by some other names, which I think are worse, including timberdoodle, night partridge, big eye, bogsucker, and mudback. And if woodcocks ever learn English, I think they would destroy us. Mudbat. I mean, they fly like a bat, I guess, but that's kind of mean. So that's the sort of thing that I do, and I'm going to talk a little bit about how I came to do this very strange and very silly career. So how I became a bird humor writer slash cartoonist. I don't know what to call myself even now. So I grew up in Ottawa, Canada. Shout out to any Canadians who are on the chat. It is the capital of Canada, and many non-Canadians don't know where it is, so I've included a helpful map. That's okay. We hid it in the swamp so that Americans wouldn't invade. So most people don't know where exactly it is. But it is, as you can see, pretty far north globally, although in Canada, it's pretty far south. Most people I like to say they hug the heater. They tend to be pretty far south. But it was a very outdoorsy place. And there were two things that I loved to do in Ottawa. I loved going outside and experiencing nature. And this is such a Canadian childhood photo. I'm feeding a black-capped chickadee. I'm in a birch spruce forest, and I'm wearing a scarf that my mom knitted for me. There's tons of snow. It's very cold. And then I liked being inside reading books. So this is a picture of my mom. And she's reading a book to me. I'm sitting on her lap, and then that's my little sister. And then to the right is a family friend. And I don't know what we're reading, but we're reading some kind of nature book. So those are the two things that I really loved. Now, I grew up in the 80s and early 90s, which is evident by my plumage at the time. So this is an outfit that I had to wear for a jazz dance competition. And I don't know if this still happens, but your mom would make your dance outfit. So my mom tried her best to work with all the spandex and sequins that she was given. But because I grew up in this time, I was really into newspaper cartoons. It was the heyday of newspaper cartoons. So I was reading The Far Side, Calvin and Hobbes, Bloom County, For Better, For Worse. So that was kind of what formed me as a person. And so I made my own cartoons, but I made them about birds because I love birds, and I love cartoons, and I love books. And this is an example of one of the cartoons I made. That's a little parakeet, and it's imagining that one day it will grow up to be a big, terrifying ostrich. And I'm pretty proud of this drawing because I drew the feet correctly. Like it has these, zygodactyl feet in that parrot, which I think is kind of neat. So I really loved science and I really loved art. And I dreaded the moment when I would have to pick one and abandon the other one forever, because I had this very stereotypical view of a scientist and a very stereotypical view of an artist. And I figured that you couldn't have a job that would mix those two things, which was definitely something that they told us when I was a kid, that these are two very separate careers. But I had this idea when I got to college because I was sort of starting to think, okay, maybe there's a way that I can blend these two things. Maybe I can be the first person in the whole world who's ever mixed art and science. So I got to college and I said to my advisor, what if I majored in science and minored in art? Or something like that. And he said no. He said the art college is over there, the science college is over there. They don't talk to each other. The paperwork would be a nightmare. What is wrong with you? Nobody mixes those two things. And that was kind of the attitude when I was a kid. But my advisor was really, really wrong. And as time passed, I learned that mixing science and art is not, in fact, weird and new and unprecedented. It's been happening for a really long time. And sort of throughout history, there have been times when we've thought, oh, well, nobody mixes science and art, but it's never been true. So I love these examples. In particular, a lot of people know that Galileo did a lot of science, but he also painted these beautiful watercolors of the moon drawn, with careful study. And I would put any of these on my wall. They're so pretty. You would probably recognize those four birds right there. Those are the four Darwin finches. And I recently went down a rabbit hole trying to figure out who drew Darwin's finches because Darwin didn't draw them. It was a woman named Elizabeth Gould, who, of course, has gone uncredited largely. And she was assisting her husband, John Gould, who was also an ornithologist and was doing a lot of rambling around and discovering birds. And so she made those in 1845. And then, of course, I'm not just talking about, drawing, I'm talking about writing. So Rachel Carson is a big inspiration to me and everybody with Silent Spring. And then David Sibley and all people who do field guides, even when I was a kid, field guides had art and they had writing in them. So these are, long-standing mixes that work really well together. So I started to see science and art not as two really separate things, but as kind of one and the same thing, reinforcing and helping each other. But I had to reach this conclusion on my own. And so I did my best to cobble together a science and art career. And I did lots of serious things because I was very worried that if I did science and art, people would think I wasn't serious because I already was making this weird mix. So here's an example here of an infographic that I made. I didn't do the painting. That was by John Sill, who's amazing. But I made it for Mass Audubon, which I worked for a while. So I was working on these like very serious sciencey infographics, and I did a lot of botany, which if you're a botanist, it involves looking at tiny bits of plant reproductive parts under a hand lens, this very serious gig. But things really clicked for me when I leaned into something that I had loved as a kid, which was, of course, humor. So I love humor. Humor may seem like something that's not important, but it gives wings to any piece of science, no matter how dry, carrying it to new places where it would never, ever, ever go. It's a really useful tool. So when my editor said, do you want to do a book that mixes science, art, and humor, and do a bird watching dictionary? I said, yes, absolutely. Are you kidding me? I'm doing this immediately. And I was so, so, so excited. But I was also a little nervous. So this series came from a publisher called Workman, who way back in the day had done, and let me know if any of you owned any of these books. I had never seen these before, but I'm from Canada, so maybe they weren't up there. But there was a series of humorous hobby dictionaries, including this one here about golfing. And Workman wanted to revive this series and start with a birdwatching dictionary, and they wanted to get me to do the dictionary. And they said, well, will you do this? And I said, uh-oh, what if I don't know enough words to fill a whole dictionary? So in a panic, I started writing down as many birdwatching terms as I could come up with. And this was my initial list. There were a lot. And I thought, okay, I can do this. That not all of the ones on this list made it in. And there were some extra ones that I added. The ones that are crossed off are words that I wound up using as my sample definitions for kind of my audition for writing this book. But I realized, okay, we really do have a lot of special words for bird watching. So my challenge when I started actually writing the book was including definitions that appealed to everybody, but also to specialized birders, because I feel like it's really important to make a book like this appeal to people who aren't necessarily really, really, really deep in birdwatching yet, but just kind of want to check it out and see what it's all about. So here are a couple examples of my general everybody definitions. So I've got egg, which is noun, a sort of small rock that often has a bird in it. I wrote some of these definitions in a bit of a fugue state because I was just writing down every joke I could come up with. And then goose is a noun meaning a duck with a larger bite radius. And then let's go to some of the specialized birder definitions. So there's pish, which is the act of making a psh psh sound with your mouth to mimic the alarm calls of songbirds. When you pish, one of two things will happen. Either a spectacular flock of songbirds will surround you, filling your heart with joy, or absolutely nothing will happen and your pishes will sputter out until you stand in silent humiliation. Good luck. And I have had both of them happen in abundance. Then I had the definition for FOY, which is first of year. So it's an acronym for first of year, an expression used to indicate the first time a birder sees a species during a calendar year. Other related acronyms include FOS, first of season, LOY, last of year, LOS, last of season, FOOY, first oriole of year, FOOOY, first orchard oriole of year, FOOOOY, first obvious orchard oriole of year. FOMO, fear of missing orioles. We all know that feeling. FPS, finches per season. FUBAR, first unicolored blackbird at refuge. FWIW, first waxwing in winter. And finally, FOIA, which is, of course, a freedom of information and hinga, which is maybe the weirdest joke I've ever written, but it makes me laugh every day, so I'll take it. I wanted to mention this kind of secret thing about this definition, which I think is really interesting, which is that I chose unicolor blackbird because it fit the letter U. But this is a really interesting bird that a lot of folks don't know about. So this is a bird that lives in South America. It's not one that I've seen. But it is maybe the best example of a bird that was named for what the males look like and not the females. And I'll show you what I mean. So here is a unicolored blackbird, and you can see I'll put the range up there too. So the name really fits the male. This is the male. Beautiful bird, shiny black, head to toe, black bill, dark eyes, dark legs, just like beautiful, beautiful bird. But do you want to see what the female looks like? Okay, here is a unicolor blackbird. Look at this. She's got at least three colors. She's got an eye stripe. She's got beautiful scalloped markings on her wings. She's just stunning. And I am so mad that this bird has been called, at least in English, unicolored blackbird. It may have a better name when it's not in English. Some of the art has secret inspirations as well. So I'm going to share the story for my definition of band. So I talk about how banding is this tool that ornithologists use where they will put a little, basically an ankle bracelet around a bird. And that way, when they find the bird dead, they can learn information about it. But also, they will put these larger, colorful, often what are called auxiliary bands, which enable ornithologists to tell what the birds are when they're alive. And that way, no individuals will learn about them. And so I put a green band on the herring gull legs that I used to illustrate this, and they say U10. And that's based on a gull that I met. And here's a picture that I took of this gull. You can see the U10. I was very excited to meet this gull because anytime you find a banded bird, you can learn more about that bird by going to birdband.gov. So or is it bird banding? Someone remind me. I think it's bird banding. So I was very excited to see this bird, and I started taking pictures. And as I was taking pictures, it ran up to a bag and ripped it open and ripped out a plastic bag inside and ripped out a bag of goldfish crackers and started eating them. And I felt so bad that all I did was take pictures while this was happening, but it happened so fast. But you can see that I got some pictures of this bird. And then I emailed the researchers who had banded the bird, and I learned about him. He was banded through a project called the Gulls of Appledore Project from Appledore, Maine. And I learned so much about this gull. He is such an interesting character, and I can talk more about him later if you're curious. But I wrote an article for Audubon based on him called The Ballad of U10, How One Mischievous Bird Taught Me to Love Gulls Even More. And so that's why I put a little secret reference to my favorite gull in this book. I also put a reference here for pop-up. I drew a yellow-breasted chat. And I drew this shortly after I had a failed search for a yellow-breasted chat. A stray yellow-breasted chat had wandered into my neighborhood, and there was a blizzard. And my friend and I went out to find this yellow-breasted chat. We utterly failed. We were hoping it would pop up for just a second. It never popped up and we failed. And so that was why I drew it. Although I will say this past spring, when I was at the biggest week in American birding festival in Ohio, we did get this chat. And so this is a photo of her life for yellow-breasted chat. So we were able to get her nemesis bird, but that's why it was in that drawing. I also learned some new things while researching this book. So I knew what an IBA was, and it is a noun, which is short for important bird area, a region that is of critical importance to birds, spearheaded by BirdLife International and supported by partners around the world. The IBA program works to identify, monitor, and protect areas that are essential to avian survival. But as I was working on this, I Googled IBA and something very different came up that I knew I had to include, which was that IBA is also short for Iron Butt Association, a group of people who promote extreme long distance motorcycle riding. In case you're a motorcyclist and you picked up the wrong book, hopefully your butt is okay. So I am so tickled that this exists. And I actually found a patch that you can get from the Iron Butt Association if you do the Dusty Butt Challenge, I guess. And I am so delighted. There are just so many different people in the world. I can't imagine sitting down for this long. My butt would fall off, let alone get dusty. So that just delighted me. Some of my definitions are personal soapboxes. So I wanted to include a little bit of this here. So under the definition of seen anything good, which is the customary call by which birders greet each other. When identifying a birder, be aware that there are several variant calls. Here are some greetings you may hear. I have some calls and I mentioned whether they're birders or not birders. So if someone says any warblers today, you can assume they're a birder. And if someone comes up to you and says, wow, that camera is gigantic, are you some kind of spy? They don't know that it's for birding and they're a non-birder. But at the very end, I included I like birds, but I'm not really a birder. I have trouble telling empids apart, and I don't know my flight calls. For folks who don't know what an empid is, it's like it's a type of flycatcher that even experts can't tell apart necessarily in all situations. And as someone who says those things is a birder. And it's so interesting to me because I go to bird festivals all over the country and they're full of people who have come to a bird festival and they are too shy to call themselves birders. They just think they're not good enough. And I think this is a real problem because it's caused, of course, by imposter syndrome, which we all experience, but it's also caused sometimes by a culture among some birders of being unwelcoming to new birders. And I think this is a real shame. I think it's really important that everybody who looks at birds gets to be a birder and that we welcome everybody in because that's how birding becomes better and grows. So here is my personal soapbox definition of birder, and that's why I included this. So it's a noun for a person who engages in the hobby of spotting, listening to, and or otherwise perceiving birds. If you love observing birds, you are a birder. If you're new to the hobby, you are a birder. I'm also saying this to myself because sometimes I think, oh, I'm not a good enough birder. I just don't know my empids. If you love birds but have never heard any of the slang or scientific jargon in this book before, you're a birder. If you're the type of person who judges other birders for not knowing enough about birds, you are still a birder, but you're also an ass. If you're a peregrine falcon and love observing birds, you're just hungry. So birding is, I think, a joy and a gift and a cause for all of us. And it really is for everyone, no matter how you choose to bird. And I think we need more birders more now than ever, now that wildlife is being threatened all over the world, and especially in my home country of the US. We need more birders. We need more people out there loving birds and sharing this. And so if you have any doubt yourself about whether you're a birder, you can call yourself whatever you want, but you belong in this kind of hobby. So thank you for listening. Thanks so much for coming and for reading my my book and for caring about birds. You folks are, to me, the people who keep people like me going. It is so heartening to know that other people care about birds and are working really hard to help birds. So I hope my work informs you, but more importantly, I hope it lifts your mood. And if you felt small and insignificant before, I hope you now feel huge and terrifying and empowered. So thank you so much. And I'm very excited to hear your questions.
Thank you so much, Rosemary. Oh my gosh. So folks that continually come to this Bird Book Club know that I go through and I I I like literally go in and dive into what our authors have written, and boy, do I have a lot of fun notes. But I want to pick up on something that you said about birders, and totally, I love that you have your soapbox and that you're able to share it with us. And totally agree that a birder is a birder. If you look at birds, you're watching birds. And I have a funny little story to share with you, just because I think it will help us as we think about the job that you have to share birding with people. So I was hiking in the Smoky Mountains, and binoculars out, looking across a field, and a group of people came along and like, oh, what are you looking at? And it happened to be a bear and two cubs. And I'm like, if I tell people I'm looking at a bear and two cubs, it's going to be, pandemonium, and people are just going to gather all around. And so I looked at the group of people and I said, oh, I'm watching these warblers over here. And they're like, oh, okay. And they kept walking. And
Yep.
so I think, Rosemary, about what you do and how you are able to engage people who might have been one of those people in the Smoky Mountains. Oh, yeah, it's just a bird, I'm walking on.
Mhm.
Because you bring it just so down to, kind of the basics, despite all of the really big words that you have in here. So when you think about, you've given us a little bit of background, but when you think about this, like, okay, so on page 15, bird by ear.
Mhm.
And so you draw a cute little cartoon about the different sounds that the birds make. But I have to admit to you that every time I hear a heron from now on, I'm going to think of a Lego.
Yeah. Yeah, they sound like I think I'd say like they sound like a person stepping on a Lego. They sound horrifying, like really horrifying. Like they're, if you don't know, I mean, I guess different herons sound differently, but also a lot of herons sound horrifying. So look up little blue heron, great blue heron, even the egrets. Wow. They sound, I'm not going to mimic it, but whatever you're thinking, it's worse. Like they sound like someone who's murdering someone. Like they're just the screaming and the hissing and like a dinosaur. I love it.
Yeah, so a lot of times people are out walking and they hear this weird sound, and it doesn't sound like a bird. It
Hmm.
doesn't sound like a bird. So that I should carry that little cartoon around with me so that when people see. And
Yeah.
actually, wouldn't that be fun to have your cartoons on a fan, and when you're birding with people or when you're walking around, you can just hold up one of your cartoons,
I
a new kind of flashcard.
that
So,
yeah. I think I would feel a little egotistical, but you're welcome to do it. And then if I see you,
I,
I'll know it's you.
I might try that. So I want to point out in the chat, and I'm going to mess up the name, Rodrigo. Um, I just have to point out what was said about the pishing,
Yes.
because when I go bird watching and I'm going psh, 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 my family just is like, oh my God, they're so embarrassed by me. But I want to point out that he says, oh, and another thing that happens when you're pishing is that you attract another birder.
Yeah, I once, this isn't pishing, but I once heard a screech owl in my neighborhood, which was not unheard of. And I ran all the way across a park and I got to the spot, and it was a guy playing a tape of a screech owl. And if his plan was to lure someone to a birder over, it worked. But I was crushed. I was so crushed. So yeah, that will work. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a
and
lot of fun.
Rodrigo also says finally a book that represents my whole personality. So thank you so much because it represents my personality. So I am not alone.
Well, and I love that because people do have this kind of misperception that birders are all a bunch of nerdy looking people. And look at the faces that we can see here. We're not nerdy looking.
I think I'm pretty nerdy, but I own it. I've got this shirt that's got little birds all over it. Yeah, it is really it's becoming more diverse in terms of like age and background, and I'm so happy about that because when I was a kid, I didn't even know women who birded. Like there were small numbers. So it's improving every day, and that makes me so happy.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you're right. The more people we get engaged in the birding and think about birds and care about birds, the more they'll care in general.
Yeah, I
But
hope so.
as I was going through this, and I love that it's alphabetical, so thanks for that, for just making it real easy for me to, did she talk
Oh, to
about
look for
this?
it.
And I could look in it and look at what it is. But, and as you can tell, I have lots of little notes in here, but
That's
I
amazing.
just, your brain, the way that it works, and yes, I love bird nerdy, Frida says. Um, the way your brain works. So on page 4, you have American robin and the definition of the American robin. How do you come up with some of this stuff? Like, it's a device that, I mean, what were you thinking when you kind of came up with that
Oh,
for the,
yeah, that it
and I
converts
admit,
worms into, I forget what it is, like 100 decibel sounds outside. So outside your window at 5 a.m. I was just thinking about like I mean I've birded for so long, and I don't know if any of you have had this experience, but especially in urban areas, robins are calling earlier and earlier. And so I have been woken up at 5 a.m. by robins outside my window, and they're so loud and they're so annoying, and I love them so much, but also like, come on, guys, take a break. So I think I just went through all the experiences I'd had and thought about them, and yeah, I mean, by the end, I was definitely like running out, and I was like, oh no, what else is funny? And I did send a couple of definitions. This is like a little peek about how birds work, or books work, but I did send a couple definitions to my editor, and he just sent back, these aren't jokes. Like, I know you think they're jokes, but this is just words. And I was like, I know, I've been staring at words for so long. I'm starting to like lose my ability to tell. So good editing is also important.
yes, yes. Well, and somebody who's maybe not a birder and has the opportunity to look at something, and their feedback may, help
Mhm.
organize it a little differently or give a little bit of a different a definition or something. But
Yeah.
my family does make fun of me because I will put earplugs in so that I am not awakened at 4 a.m. in the morning for that. What did you
Yeah.
call it? A device that converts worms into 100 decibel songs outside your bedroom at 4 a.m.
Yeah. That's a
So
good strategy. Yeah. Yes. Earplugs.
we, we have a question about how long did it take you to write the book in its entirety?
So I don't remember. Books have such a long lead time that it takes so long to get a book printed and shipped that you'll finish it and then like a year or two will elapse. So I'm trying to think. It wasn't a full year. The process of putting the whole book together was a couple of years, but just the part where I was just writing, I think was probably 8 or 9 months or something like that. I do a lot of other stuff on the side too, but then so you write all of that, but then there are so many editing periods. So you'll get it edited and then copy edited, and you're constantly getting drafts sent back and rewriting and rereading and researching and realizing you made a mistake. And so the whole process is very long, but the actual part where you're just sitting and writing is, I would say, half of it, which is a sad thing I learned about writing books is you want to just hole up in your room and write, but so much of it is research and editing and, copy editing and calling people, and it's a like a whole complex process. It's fun. I really enjoy it, but yeah.
Well, I'm glad you think it's fun because despite the fact and how fun you make everything look, it does take a lot to write a book, and it takes a lot to do that process with the editors, back and forth. And I I know that when I was writing a book, it was constant back and forth with the editor for seemingly little things,
Yeah.
and it was just it that I think, to answer the question of how long does it take to write the book, for you, not only do you have the writing of the book and the back and the forth and all of that, but you have all of the fun cartoons and things that go along with this. And I have to admit, Rosemary, I was rolling in laughter with some of this stuff.
Oh,
And
good.
I love that you make it for all audiences. like, I think you did a really good job of, picking
Good.
on the birder, so to speak, and then also just making it very easy for us to be able to laugh along with you.
Well, and I'm picking on myself to be very clear. Like all of these things are things that I have told a whole crowd I'm gonna pish to bring out a bird, and then I pish, and they're all staring at me like, "Why are you making this sound?" And then the birds disappear, and they're like, "Why did you do that?" I've been there. It's more fun.
What are you
Yeah, great
thinking?
questions.
Yeah. Now I do. I feel like I love when you were little that, you said that you've been birding since you were a child. Now, it looked like in your family, you guys were reading some kind of nature book. Was that just like, did you just kind of go out there on your own, or was that kind of like your family would go out, or, how did you like say, okay, I mean, you talked about it a little bit, but was that something that just, you said you grew up with it, but how did you, like, what was your thing? Like, did you have a spark bird, or was there something that just, you were like, aha?
Yeah, I think I was lucky and I was not. So I think I was lucky because my mom was really into nature. My dad was not. He became into nature, but he was like a guy from the tenements on the Lower East Side of Manhattan, and he only knew pigeons. He's why I'm obsessed with pigeons. And I wrote another book about them. But he was like, when he met his exotic wife from Canada, he was like, "What are all these little flappy things you're looking at?" But my mom was always really into nature, but she was a journalist, so that wasn't her. And she wasn't a birder. I just say she had an appreciation for it. So that wasn't her interest, but she was very analytical as a journalist too, which I think is also why I wound up writing. So she encouraged me to look at a lot of stuff in nature, and then I think I'm just that kind of nerdy, obsessive type who wanted to keep lists of things. I had lists of I had a fossil collection and a feather collection and a stamp collection, and I had a list of mammals and all these things. I think where I was unlucky was that I didn't have a community aspect. So I didn't know any other birders. I had bird guides and that's it. I had a paper list. And there was a column in the newspaper where people mentioned rare birds, but I had no peers at all. And I didn't really think of it as something that other people did. And so that's one reason why I'm really happy with young birders groups and, all kinds of different groups that exist now, like Feminist Bird Club and BIPOC Birding Club and stuff, is because people are actually making friends who are birders. And I don't think I did that until I was like 25 or 30. Which I think is a problem because you're a better birder when you have community. You can go out and do it on your own. But I like knowing people. So yeah, I was doing it, but I was doing it myself. I was like, I'm the only birder in the world, I guess. It's just we didn't have eBird, we didn't have Merlin. I just had a list.
Yep, and those lists are important for people, and some people have different kinds of lists. Do you have like a list? Is there a list do you do state, country? Do you do cartoons? Do you have like a checklist of all the birds that you've done a cartoon for?
So I am not a lister anymore. For a while, I was a bird lister as a kid. And then I felt like I could see I was the type of person who was becoming obsessive, and I was not as excited when there was a bird that I had already seen. And I remember one moment when I saw a peregrine falcon and I thought, I've already seen a peregrine falcon. And then I thought, okay, I don't think I'm the right person to keep a list. I need to put this list down because I'm not getting excited anymore. But I have more recently, I got really into butterflies and I was keeping butterfly list, but mostly I don't list. I have nemesis birds. I have birds that I really want to see, but other than that, I don't really keep a list. But no shade on anyone who keeps a list. It is such a fun game. I just feel like for me, it made me too bored with birds that were cool. So that's why I personally don't have one. But yeah, I miss my paper list. I wish I still had it. It was in a bound guide. It came from the Audubon Society way back in the day, and it was a physical list that I had with Audubon paintings, and I would dutifully fill it out. And it was cool.
And I think if I were to gather my list, it would be little scribbles in all of the field guides and little pieces of paper as I travel around. So I want to pick out a couple things. because I love that you included these in the dictionary. I want to just bring up a couple little things, and then I want to get you back on your soapbox just a little bit. Um, so on page 50, you talk about fecal sacs. And I find this just a fascinating nature thing. Can you talk to us a little bit about fecal sacs and why did you include those in the dictionary?
Oh, I'm so sorry for what I'm about to impart for folks who don't know about them. They're okay. So, if you don't know what a fecal sac is, a lot of songbirds in particular will, they don't want to lead predators to their nest. So they try to get the poop that their babies are producing in the nest far away. And the babies will produce this like incredible encapsulated poop that's in this membrane, and the parents will carry it away and drop it often in your swimming pool. So if you have a swimming pool, I don't, but they'll apparently drop it in your swimming pool. The parents will eat it for the first few days, I think, and then the fecal sacs get too big and they won't eat it. Um, but the facts like that are what I live for because all babies are adorable and gross. And I just think it's really funny that birds do this. But it's an incredible feat of nature. And it's also the kind of gross humor that I love.
And I think about that when I did have a swimming pool for a while, and then also bird baths, and they'll come along and they'll drop it in bodies of water. To your point of discouraging predators,
Mhm.
because it's harder for them to scent it out and to get to it if it's bare, sinking to the bottom of a pool or the bottom of a bird bath.
Yeah, it's
So
also, if you're watching a nest, watch for the babies will put their head down, stick their butt up, and poop the fecal sac. Like it is, you can see it happening.
yeah,
It's incredible.
yeah,
It's
yeah. It
magical.
really is fun. It's like a diaper changing that I wouldn't do, but it is like a little diaper that they take
Yeah.
out. It's all wrapped up, and then they go and dispose of it. Um, I had asked you about when you were growing up. Did you have a spark bird? And I don't think I heard that. And then Jen is asking, did you have a spark bird? And she said it might be tough since you started as a kid, but maybe there's one that really stood out that you can credit your interest in birds in. Is there? Do you have it? No, I thought I remember you saying something about grouse.
Oh, yeah, that's a nemesis. Yeah, spruce grouse. Oh my goodness, I got sooty grouse before I got spruce grouse, and I'm on the East Coast. Yeah, I don't really, but I usually say that it was Northern Parula or Parula, however you say it. I switch depending on what the people around me are saying, because I remember in my urban backyard in Ottawa growing up, I remember a moment where, like, I feel like because I didn't know any other birders. I didn't know that you're supposed to look around for warblers in the trees in the spring. And these warblers came down really low in my backyard in this low apple tree. And I was watching these and I'm pretty sure in retrospect that they were northern parallels. And I was watching these birds and they were more beautiful than anything I'd ever seen. And I didn't know we had birds that beautiful. And I remember that really solidifying in my head, like I need to look for these things more because these are just incredible. They're like a rainbow. They're really beautiful. So probably those.
Excellent. Well, thanks for that. And then I had said I wanted to kind of get you on your soapbox. You have in your book um, a little bit about baiting. And
Oh
as we're
yeah.
getting ready to head into the winter season, depending on where you are, it's still warm here, and I'm sitting in Madison, Wisconsin. It's still quite warm here, but it is a serious topic. But page 6 of the book, do, tell us a little bit about why you wrote about that and the importance of that.
So I'm not a professional photographer. I follow a photographer named Melissa Grew, who is really, really cool. And she has written about how she doesn't like when animals are baited. So I wasn't really writing from a place of reading a lot of papers about it or having a huge amount of firsthand knowledge. But baiting is, at least with owls, there's different ways that you can woo in birds. But with owls, people will put mice out and then get the perfect photo of the bird coming at you. But this is kind of cruel for both the mice and the owls because the owls can become habituated to people. They can wind up hanging out on roads. So I think more broadly, it's important to think about. I feel this way in general about some cases of feeding animals. I think having a bird feeder is fine, but in my neighborhood, for example, during COVID, people were feeding the coyotes, and then a coyote bit some kid because people were hand feeding the coyotes. Like when you're don't like think about the animals you're feeding and whether the interaction that you're getting is worth the harm it might be causing to the animal. And I think that's pretty important. So yeah, and just the also the idea of carrying around a live mouse and then dumping it in this, probably like a farmed mouse and then dumping it in the snowy field, like I don't know. It just, I know it's hard to get photos of birds, but I follow an Instagram account called Shoot Small, and they go for a faraway bird in an atmospheric shot of the landscape. And I think that is probably a better way to go for that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's a minor soapbox for me, but it's definitely a problem. Don't carry mice around in your pocket. Don't do it.
Well, one of the things that people sometimes recommend is that the roadkill, throw it off farther away from the side of the road, because owls and other birds of prey in particular will come to the side of the road and then have the higher opportunity to be hit by a car. So just, it's a different kind of baiting. I
That
find
feels
myself
okay to
doing that.
me. I think yeah, that feels totally okay to me. I had the privilege of in grad school, the writer Bernd Heinrich is like part of my graduate program, and I know that in one of the years he took a roadkill deer and put it in his backyard so people could study the ravens. I think that's fine. It's cool.
Yeah, and I think most ornithological societies and bird clubs have like ethics on their website that help you
Mhm.
understand what's appropriate and what's not. Okay, so let's go to a little more funner as we think about, and feel free, folks, to put a question in the chat. We have a few more minutes left. I want to talk a little bit about why you put whale watch in here. So on page 161, whale
Mhm.
watch. Okay, why is whale watch in a bird book?
Well, I live on the East Coast. We have whales, so I've been on many a whale watch. They are really good for finding birds. But I think I was thinking about one moment in particular when I was working for Mass Audubon, and one of my jobs as the communications person, one of the communications people for their amazing marketing team, was to go along with a seabird survey that they did and take pictures of the actual survey happening. And it was the funniest experience because here we were out in Stellwagen Bank, Stellwagen, I never know how to say it, saying Stellwagen, and this incredibly productive marine sanctuary. And two humpback whales were breaching in tandem over and over next to the boat, like these giant creatures breaching and breaching. And I was supposed to ignore them because there were sheer waters that I was supposed to count. And I just remember thinking that was I love birds, and it was the funniest experience because the whales were sort of blocking our view of these Manx shearwaters or whatever. And I was like, the shearwaters are cool, but also like this is happening. Why are we not paying attention to that? But I put it in there because whale watchers are really great for birds too.
Yeah, absolutely. That reminds me of an ABA field trip that John Acorn and I were leading together. And, he's an insect guy. Well, he's a fellow Canadian.
Okay, I have still not met him, but I will say he had a show called The Nature Nut,
Mhm.
and I watched it when I was in high school because it made me feel like I wasn't the only one in the world. And I like cried. I know this is silly, but one day I'm
Oh,
gonna meet him and I'm just gonna cry because I was like, hey, I'm a nature nut and I am not and I'm afraid to admit or whatever the song was. Yeah, very cool guy.
oh, it's so funny because we were on this birding, we were co-leading this ABA birding trip, and we're walking along, and I see an antlion, and I'm like, oh, this is so cool. We have to look at this. And then I'm looking at John because And I don't know why this went through my brain. I'm like, oh, but this is a birding trip. Should I stop and point it out to everybody? And then I'm like, wait, John Acorn, he's like a bug guy. And so we diverted from bird watching and watched the antlion do its thing, which is really totally cool. And then we went on bird watching, and people actually talked about it afterwards, that like, oh, we saw an antlion. And I thought that it's we weren't so stuffy that we were like, oh no time to look at other nature. So.
Well, in the case of the bird watch, it was totally understandable because it was a survey, but also it was killing me. It was killing me. The whales were like fluke slapping and fin slapping and breaching, and I was like, come on. So cool.
Yeah, no, that's got to be a tough one. On that same page of Whale Watch, you have warbler neck. What do you do? I mean, it's a real thing, right?
Yeah. Okay, so I will confess. So I have a giant camera with a huge telephoto, that 100 to 500 that everybody has. I lift weights because otherwise my back, and I do core exercises. It's not just for birding, but like it saves me because otherwise I used to throw my back out from my camera, and my wrists and stuff. So yeah, birding can be pretty physically demanding. Honestly, for warbler neck, I just truck on through it, but it's painful. And I try to make sure that the other muscles are strengthened enough so that I can buttress the horrible, the horrible
Yeah.
neck pain that results. Yeah. And yeah, holding those cameras for ages and ages. It's tough
Yep.
stuff.
Yeah, and I know they have some, with those like body things that you can,
Mhm.
you look like a robot almost. So,
Yeah.
Rosemary, we are running out of time. Thank you so much for joining us, and all of you all y'all out there. This makes a great stocking stuffer. Rosemary was talking about how most of her books are like small, and I was like, that's perfect because you can stick it in somebody's stocking, or you can wrap up a whole series of them. And Rosemary did the pigeon book with us earlier. That was what, 3 years ago, I
Oh
think,
yeah, I think it
almost.
was more than that. Yeah, yeah, but
Yeah.
I have a pigeon book that is roughly the same size. I have some big picture books for kids, but those ones aren't really meant to be carried around in the
Or
so it's
stuffed in a
okay there,
stocking.
babe. Yeah.
They can still be wrapped and put under a Christmas tree.
Ah.
So our next Bird Book Club is October 30,
Mm.
and it is Ornithography, an illustrated guide to bird lore and symbolism by Jessica Rao. And so we're looking forward to that. But I want to leave you all with one last definition that Rosemary has in her book, and it's nothing too heavy. I just want to make sure you have a taste for what is in this book. I'm rolling. I'm rolling in laughter and just like, oh, yes. And thinking, oh my gosh, I have to share this book with more people. But on page 160, your definition of vulture, this just struck me as incredibly funny. A bird of prey that, out of politeness, waits for its prey to die of natural causes before eating it. And so,
Right. I'm proud of that one. I love vultures and they're so refined when they're not pooping on
yeah,
their own legs. Yeah.
yeah, they're so great.
Aw. Thank you so much. And it is lovely to see so many of you. And it is really validating to read a goofy joke and watch you guys laugh and smile because I do so much of my work alone in my room. So thank you. You're why I do all of this is I hope to give these amazing people who fight for birds and watch birds like a little moment of smiling. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank
Yeah.
you, everybody, for joining us. We will see you next time. And thanks, Rosemary, so much. It has been so fun and delightful to have you this evening as our guest.
Thank you so much. Thanks. Bye, everybody.